Kujawa here, and I'm continuing on in my Lullaby course series where I just read to you from the A Course in Miracles original edition. And where we left off last time, in the last video, was we were in chapter 1, the miracle principles, and we read up to principle number 44, and so I will be starting with principle number 45. The miracle is an expression of an inner awareness of Christ and the acceptance of Christ's plan for healing. The mind is then in a state of grace, and then the mind naturally becomes gracious both to the host within and the host without, the stranger without. The mind is then in a state of grace, and then the mind naturally becomes gracious both to the host within and the stranger without. By bringing in the stranger becomes your brother. 46. A miracle is never lost. A miracle touches many people you do not even know, and sometimes a miracle produces undreamed of changes in forces of which you are not even aware. That's not your concern. The miracle will always bless you. The miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. Those miracles you're not asked to perform are still expressions of your own state of grace, but the action aspect of the miracle should be Christ-controlled because of Christ's complete awareness of the whole plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only Christ is in a position to know where grace can be bestowed. 47. Miracle-mindedness means miracle readiness. Readiness means that you should always keep your perception straight. I always keep my perception straight. I always stay ready. And I keep my perception straight. I stay ready so that I will always be ready and willing and able. That's what readiness means. These are the essentials for listen, learn, and do. What are the essentials for the guidance, listen, learn, and do? It's this. You must be ready to listen, willing to learn, and able to do. You must be ready to listen, willing to learn, and able to do. Only the last, being able to do, is involuntary. Only being able, the being able part is involuntary, because it's the doing or the application of miracles which must be Christ-controlled. The other two, which are being ready to listen and willing to learn, those are the voluntary aspects of miracle-mindedness, and they are up to you. Only the action aspect is not up to you. 48. Awe is an inappropriate response to miracles. Revelation is literally unspeakable, because revelation is an experience of unspeakable love. And so awe should be reserved for revelation, to which awe is perfectly and correctly applicable. Awe should be reserved for revelation, to which awe is perfectly and correctly applicable. Awe is not appropriate for miracles, because a state of awe is worshipful. A state of awe implies that one of a lesser order stands before a greater one. And this is the case only when a soul stands before its Creator. Souls are perfect creations. Souls are perfect creations, and souls experience awe only in the presence of the Creator of perfection. The miracle, on the other hand, is a sign of love among equals. Equals cannot be in awe of one another because awe implies inequality. Awe is therefore an inappropriate reaction to me. An elder brother is entitled to respect for his greater experience and a reasonable amount of obedience for the older brother's greater wisdom. And the older brother is also entitled to love because the older brother is a brother, and also the older brother is entitled to devotion if that older brother is devoted. And it is only my devotion that entitles me to yours. There is nothing about me that you cannot attain. I have nothing that doesn't come from God. The main difference between us as yet is that I have nothing else besides what comes from God. And having nothing else but what comes from God. This leaves me in a state of true holiness, which is only a potential in you. That quote, "No man cometh unto the Father but by me," is among the most misunderstood statements in the Bible. That quote doesn't mean that I am in any way separate or different from you, except in time, which does not really exist at all. Actually, the quotation is more meaningful if the quotation is considered on a vertical rather than a horizontal axis. Regarded along the vertical axis, man stands below me and I stand below God. In the process of rising up, I am higher. This is because without me, the distance between God and man would be too great for you to encompass. I bridge the distance as an elder brother to man on the one hand, and as a son of God on the other. That's how I bridge the distance, the seeming distance between me and you. On one side, I am an elder brother to man, and on the other side of that bridge, I am a son of God. My devotion to my brothers has placed me in charge of the family of God, which I can render complete only to the extent to which I can share this charge of the family of God. This may appear to contradict the statement, "I and my Father are one." But there are still separate parts in the statement in recognition that the Father is greater. The original statement was, quote, "are of one kind," unquote. The Holy Spirit is the bringer of revelation. Revelations are indirectly inspired by me because I am close to the Holy Spirit and I am alert to the revelation readiness of my brothers. And so I can thus bring down to them more than they can draw down to themselves. Miracle Principle 49. The Holy Spirit is the highest communication medium. Miracles do not involve this type of communication because miracles are temporary communication devices. Miracles are temporary communication devices. When man returns to his original form of communication with God, the need for miracles is over. The Holy Spirit mediates higher to lower communication, keeping the direct channel from God to man open for revelation. Revelation is not reciprocal. Revelation is always from God to man. The miracle is reciprocal because the miracle involves equality. Principle 50. The miracle is a learning device which lessens the need for time. In the longitudinal or horizontal plane, the recognition of the true equality of all the members of the family of God appears to involve almost endless time. However, the sudden shift from horizontal to vertical perception, which the miracle entails, introduces an interval from which the doer and the receiver both emerge farther along in time than they would otherwise have been. The miracle in this way has the unique property of shortening time. By rendering the space of time the miracle occupies unnecessary. There is no relationship between the time a miracle takes and the time the miracle covers. The miracle substitutes for learning that might have taken thousands of years. And the miracle does this by the underlying recognition of perfect equality, which means holiness between the doer and the receiver on which the miracle rests. We said before that the miracle abolishes time. The miracle abolishes time by a process of collapsing time and thus abolishing certain intervals within time. The miracle does this, however, within the larger temporal sequence. The miracle establishes an out-of-pattern time interval, which is not under the usual laws of time. Only in this sense is the miracle timeless. By collapsing time, the miracle literally saves time, much as daylight saving time does. It rearranges the distribution of light. Principle 51. The miracle is the only device which man has at his immediate disposal for controlling time. Only revelation transcends time, having nothing to do with time at all. The miracle is much like the body in that both the miracle and the body are learning aids which aim at facilitating a state in which the body and the miracle are unnecessary. When the soul's original state of direct communication is reached, neither the body nor the miracle serves any purpose. While you believe you are in a body, however, you can choose between loveless and miraculous channels of expression. You can make an empty shell, but you cannot express nothing at all. You can wait, you can delay, you can even paralyze yourself and reduce your creativity almost to nothing. And you can even introduce a developmental arrest or even a regression. but you cannot abolish your creativity. You can even destroy your medium of communication, but not your potential. Man was not created by his own free will alone. Only what man creates is man's to decide. Only what you create is yours to decide. Only what you create is yours to decide. Only what you create is yours to decide. The basic decision of the miracle-minded is not to wait on time any longer than is necessary. Time can waste as well as be wasted. The miracle worker, therefore, accepts the time control factor gladly, because he recognizes that every collapse of time brings all men closer to the ultimate release from time, in which the Son and the Father are one. Equality does not imply homogeneity now. When everyone recognizes that they have everything, individual contributions to the family of God will no longer be necessary. In other words, when the atonement has been completed, when the healing plan of man has been completed, all talents will be shared by all of the members of God's family. God is not partial. All of God's children have God's total love, and all God's gifts are freely given to everyone alike. The quote, "Except ye become as little children," that quote means that unless you fully recognize your complete dependence on God, you cannot know the real power of you in your true relationship with your Creator. You who want peace can find peace only by complete forgiveness. You never really wanted peace before, so there was no point in being told how to achieve peace. And that's because no learning is acquired by anyone unless they want to learn it, which means unless they believe in some way that they need that learning. While the concept of lack does not exist in the creation of God, the concept of lack is very apparent in the creations of man. Lack is, in fact, the essential difference between the creations of man and the creations of God. A need implies lack by definition. Need and lack involves the recognition that you would be better off in a state which is somehow different from the one you are in. Lack is a belief that you would be better off in a state which is somehow different from the one you are in, is lack. Until the, quote, separation, which is a better term than the fall, nothing was lacking. And that nothing was lacking before the separation, which is a better word than the fall. This meant that man had no needs at all. If man had not deprived himself, man would never have experienced lacks or needs. After the separation, which was the detour into fear, needs became the most powerful source of motivation for human action. after the separation. After the separation, needs became the most powerful source of motivation for human action. All behavior is essentially motivated by needs. But behavior itself is not a divine attribute. The body is the mechanism for behavior. The body is the mechanism for behavior. The belief that you could be better off in a state somehow different from the one you're in, that's the reason why man has this mechanism at his disposal, this mechanism of behavior of the body. Each person acts according to the particular hierarchy of needs that they establish for themselves. Their hierarchy of needs that they establish for themselves, in turn, depends on their perception of what they are, that is, what they lack. A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need to correct. This sense of separation would never have occurred if you had not distorted your perception of the truth and thus perceived yourself as lacking. The concept of any sort of need hierarchy arose because, having made this fundamental error of lack, you had already fragmented yourself into levels with different needs. And as you integrate, you become one. And as you integrate and become one, your needs become one accordingly. Unified need produces unified behavior, because unified need produces a lack of ambivalence. The concept of a need hierarchy, a corollary to the original error that man can be separated from God, requires correction at its own level before the error of perceiving levels at all can be corrected. Man cannot behave effectively while he operates at split levels. However, while man operates at split levels, correction must be introduced from the bottom up. This is because you now operate in space where concepts such as up and down are meaningful. While your mind is split into levels, correction must be introduced from the bottom up. This is because you now operate in space where concepts such as up and down are meaningful. Ultimately, space is as meaningless as time. The concept of space and time, the concept is really one of space-time belief. The concept of space and time is really one of space-time belief. The physical world exists only because you can use the physical world to correct your unbelief. Your unbelief which placed you in the world originally. You can never control the effects of fear yourself, because you made fear and you believe in what you made. In attitude then, though not in content, you resemble your own Creator, who has perfect faith in His creations because He created them. Belief in a creation produces its existence. Belief in a creation produces its existence. That is why a man can believe in what no one else thinks is true. It is true for him because it was made by him. Every aspect of fear proceeds from upside-down perception. The more truly creative, they devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions. The neurotic, they devote themselves to compromise. The psychotic try to escape by establishing the certain truth of their own errors. The more truly creative devote their efforts to correcting perceptual distortions. The neurotic devotes himself to compromise, and the psychotic tries to escape by establishing the certain truth of their own errors. It is most difficult to free you by ordinary means, because you are more consistent in your own denial of truth. The miracle, however, makes no such distinctions. The miracle just corrects errors because they are errors. Thus, the next point to remember about miracles is Principle 52. The miracle makes no distinctions among degrees of misperception. The miracle is just a device for perception correction, and the miracle is effective quite apart from either the degree or the direction of the error. This is the miracle's true indiscriminateness. Truth-controlled miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. The miracles being directed toward those who can use them for themselves makes it inevitable that the miracles will extend to others, and a strong chain of healing is welded. However, Christ control takes no account at all of the magnitude of the miracle itself, because the concept of size exists in a plane that is itself unreal. Since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, the miracle would hardly be useful if the miracle were bound by the laws which govern the error that the miracle aims to correct. Only man makes this kind of mistake, and it is an example of the foolish consistency which our own beliefs have engendered. The power and strength of man's creative will must be understood before the real meaning of denial can be appreciated and relinquished. The power and strength of man's creative will must be understood before the real meaning of denial can be appreciated and relinquished. It is not mere negation. It is a positive miscreation. While the miscreation is necessarily believed in by its maker, then it does not exist at all at the level of true creation. While your error is necessarily believed in by you, its maker, your error does not exist at all at the level of true creation. Principle 53. The miracle compares what you have made with the higher level creation, accepting what is in accord with the higher level of creation as true, and rejecting the discord as false. Which means that all aspects of fear are untrue because they do not exist at the higher creative level, and therefore do not exist at all. To whatever extent you are willing to submit your beliefs to this test, to that extent are your perceptions corrected. And so in sorting out the true from the false perceptions, the miracle proceeds along the following lines. If perfect love casts out fear, and if fear exists, then there is not perfect love. But only perfect love really exists, which means if there is fear, it creates a state which does not exist. If you believe that, you will be free. And only God can establish that solution. And this faith in this solution is God's gift. This solution is God's gift. Section 2, Chapter 1. Distortions of miracle impulses. You are involved in unconscious distortions, which are producing a dense cover over your miracle impulses, and which make it hard for miracle impulses to reach your consciousness. The nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want that personal relationship to do. The nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want that interpersonal relationship to do. What do you want that interpersonal relationship to do? What do you want that interpersonal relationship to do? What do you want that personal relationship to do is what defines or limits that personal relationship. Relating is a way of achieving an outcome. In other words, relating is a way of achieving an outcome. The danger of defenses lies in their propensity for holding misperceptions rigidly in place, is what defenses do. All actions which stem from reverse thinking are literally the behavioral expressions of those who know not what they do. A rigid orientation can be extremely reliable, even if it is upside down. In fact, a rigid orientation, the more consistently upside down that rigid orientation is, that reverse thinking is, the more reliable that upside down thinking is. The more reliable or consistent that upside down thinking is, the more reliable that upside down thinking is, the more consistent it is, the more you can depend on it. However, validity is still the ultimate goal, not reliability, but validity is still the ultimate goal, just because the ego manifestations happen so consistently that now they're reliable, doesn't mean that they're valid. And being valid and true is still the ultimate goal. Validity, the ultimate goal, which reliability can only serve. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all kinds of expressions of lack of love are often very clearly seen in the fantasies which accompany hostility. The fantasies that accompany lack of love. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all kinds of expressions of lack of love are often very clearly seen in the fantasies which accompany the expressions of lack of love. Expressions that accompany lacks of love. Fantasies which accompany all kinds of expressions of lack of love are hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement. But it is a profound error to imagine that because these fantasies called hostility, vengeance, self-debasement, triumph, it's a profound error to imagine that because these fantasies are so frequent or occur so reliably, that this implies validity of the lacks of love and hostility and vengeance. Remember that while validity implies reliability, the relationship is not reciprocal. You can be wholly reliable and entirely wrong. While a reliable instrument does measure something, what use is it unless you discover what the something is? This course, then, will concentrate on validity and let reliability fall naturally into place. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion because it induces rather than straightens out the basic level confusion which underlies the perception of all those who seek for happiness with the instruments of the world. The confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses is a major source of perceptual distortion because this confusion of miracle impulses with physical impulses induces rather than straightens out the basic level confusion which underlies the perception of all those who seek happiness with the instruments of the world. They are doing basic level confusion, which results in a confusion between miracle impulses and physical impulses. If you seek happiness with the instruments of this world, you will confuse physical impulses with miracle impulses. And then inappropriate physical impulses or misdirected miracle impulses will then result in conscious guilt if expressed, and it will result in depression if those physical impulses or misdirected impulses are denied. If you express the miracle impulses inappropriately as physical impulses, they will result in conscious guilt if you express them. And if you repress or deny those inappropriate physical impulses, which are misdirected miracle impulses, and you deny expression of them, you will experience depression. All real pleasure comes from doing God's will. And all real pleasure comes from doing God's will, because not doing God's will is a denial of self. Denial of error, though, denial of error results in projection. Denying the error results in projection. Correction of error brings release. The quote, "Lead us not into temptation," it means, don't let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. That is what the quote, "Lead us not into temptation," really means. It means, do not let us deceive ourselves into believing that we can relate in peace to God or to our brothers with anything external. Child of God, you were created to create the good. You were created to create the beautiful. And you were created to create the holy. Do not lose sight of this, because the love of God for a little while must still be expressed through one body to another, because the real vision is still so dim. That's why you are to not lose sight of this. Everyone can use their body best by enlarging their perception. Use your body best to enlarge your perception so that you can see the real vision. The real vision is invisible to the physical eye. The ultimate purpose of the body is to render the body unnecessary. Learning to render the body unnecessary is the only real reason for the body's creation. Fantasies of any kind are distorted forms of thinking. Fantasies are distorted forms of thinking, because fantasies always involve twisting perception into unreality. Fantasy is a debased form of vision. Vision and revelation are closely related, while fantasy and projection are more closely associated, because both fantasy and projection are both attempts to control external reality according to false internal needs. If you twist reality in any way, you are perceiving destructively. Reality was lost through twisting, usurping, which in turn produced tyranny. I told you that you are now restored. You are now restored to your former role in the plan for the healing of man. I have told you that you are restored. You are now restored to your former role in the plan of the healing of man. But you must still choose freely to devote yourself to the greater restoration. You are now restored to your former role in the Great Awakening plan, but you must still choose freely to devote yourselves to the greater restoration. And that's because as long as a single slave remains to walk the earth, your release is not complete. Complete restoration of the family of God is the only true goal of the miracle-minded. No fantasies are true. Fantasies are distortions of perception by definition. Fantasies are a means of making false associations and obtaining pleasure from them. And you can make false associations and obtain pleasure from them. You can make fantasies only because you are creative. But although you can perceive false associations and make fantasies, you can never make those fantasies real except to yourself. Man believes in what he makes. If you create miracles, you will be equally strong in your belief in miracles. The strength of your conviction in miracles will then sustain the belief of the miracle receiver. And then fantasies will become totally unnecessary as the wholly satisfying nature of reality becomes apparent to both of them.